Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. The US Justice Department releases 3 million pages, 180,000 images and 2,000 videos linked to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The release comes after a missed legal deadline, with officials saying it ends a major review to ensure transparency. The US government enters a partial shutdown after Congress fails to pass a 2026 budget. Lawmakers signal a quick fix as the House moves to ratify a Senate-backed deal next week. The US chief of mission for Venezuela is set to arrive in Caracas as the government proposes a broad amnesty law. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez says the bill could free hundreds of political detainees and transform a notorious prison. Iran says it is ready for fair and equitable talks with the United States as regional tensions continue to rise. President Donald Trump refuses to rule out military action, while Tehran says negotiations could not occur under threats. Washington approves a $6.67 billion in arms sales to Israel amid a fragile Gaza ceasefire. The package includes 30 Apache attack helicopters and infantry assault vehicles, according to the State Department. More than 200 people are killed in a collapse at the Rabaya coltan mine in eastern DRC. The site produces about 15% of the world's coltan and has been under M23 rebel control since 2024. The United Nations warns it could run out of money by July as member states fail to pay their fees. The warning comes after the United States withholds funding and other countries fall into arrears. China conducts naval and air patrols around the Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. The feature is claimed by Beijing but lies within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Newly released documents from the Department of Justice show Howard Lutnick, currently serving as Trump's Secretary of Commerce, arranged to visit Jeffrey Epstein's island in 2012. According to emails, Lutnick was in contact with Epstein's assistant, who advised that Epstein wanted to meet with him during his trip to the Caribbean. Lutnick, along with his family and friends, were in the area during the holidays, and communications suggest a meeting took place. Lutnick has denied spending time with Epstein, claiming he hadn't seen the latest Epstein documents. Latest files also show that Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein corresponded through intermediaries several times in 2011 and 2012, years after Lutnick had vowed to never be in the same room with Epstein again. Meanwhile, the files have also showed that Elon Musk apparently corresponded with Epstein in 2012 and 2013 as they discussed meeting at the late-convicted sex offender's private island and at Musk's SpaceX facility in Southern California. Joining us now is Major General Sudhakar G, a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joining us live from Jaipur. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, it's always a pleasure. Musk and Lutnick, two people very close to Donald Trump. We've seen other officials in Donald Trump's orbit, including the likes of Peter Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to America, all named in these files and all seemingly having some sort of correspondence with either Epstein directly or with his associates. How will this affect trust going forward in the Trump administration as these files continue to be sieved through?
It's total nosediving. We sat in the morning, Thomas, very unfortunate to hear all these names coming up again. with very substantive kind of signature and input pointing towards their deep involvement in the entire nefarious activities of Epstein. This must be gone into very seriously. Now, I personally feel that maybe earlier I had a very sympathetic and empathetic response to all the cases, but now, day by day, hour after hour, new names are popping up. Looks like the whole world order is immersed in, deeply
Mm.
immersed in such kind of activities. This has to be focused and given due focus and attention by the American authorities. I don't think we should gloss it over or ignore it to a low priority task. Must be taken forward with in a professional, investigative manner,
Mm.
and accountability must be ensured because big names are coming. Then I think America needs to actually shake itself up. Otherwise, it's heading for something very, very dangerous. Back to you, Thomas.
Accountability, of course, is the question. We seem to just be getting straight up denials from all these officials about involvement. And we heard from Lutnick, for example, who denied a meeting or communication within a certain time frame. And then it was disproved once again when more of these files came out. Of course, the same thing has happened to Donald Trump himself with previous releases. How will accountability be given moving forward? Do we expect the Trump administration or those in power to be asked more about it, to be debunked furthermore? Any responsibility to be taken here? Further explanation? Are there any checks and balances that can be put forward that will give Lutnick and others to provide explanation about these communications, which have now been proved?
Good question. A very sharp and brilliant question you have asked. America is the oldest democracy. It has got the oldest constitution based on which the country is running, and it's a time-tested one. Many of its articles have been subjected to revision, revisits by relevant authorities. And I personally feel that it's a good question. There are no quick answers because the America being what it is going through today, it doesn't have a quick solution. I personally feel the people of America have to come onto the street. They have to galvanize. They have to speak in one voice. What kind of future for the America do they expect? Do they expect these kind of things? Do they expect ice killing? Do they expect tariff to be imposed and the inflation to be taken, the brunt of inflation to be taken by the customers? Do they expect the backyard Maduro, no matter what the reason is to be president and his wife to be picked up at the middle of the night? Is this the new rule of law? So the people of America are the strength and the weaknesses. If they accept what is coming forward, well, I have nothing to say. It is their country, it is their constitution, it is their leader. They have elected Donald Trump. I think it's about time they have to demand for very, very apolitical, neutral kind of organization or establishment which must, go deeper into each of the issues, totally apolitical, without any prejudice or any kind of biases to any government. Selection of nomination of the people will require a great deal of scrutiny by people who enjoy the status of some kind of a neutrality. They have proven credentials in the past. Those are the people who must be given this job. They must be assigned the task of investigation and coming to the fine conclusion as to whether a person was actually involved or it is subject to, being dismissed by the accused as is being done now. Back to you, Thomas.
Of course, there's been flip-flapping when it comes to this issue. Donald Trump's constant efforts to push this story out of the headlines have not been successful. The singular, one could say, issue where that has occurred. And now, of course, we're seeing further and further names in his administration and in his orbit, which are being put forward. In terms of taking accountability from the press, what are your thoughts in the way that the media haven't been briefed on this situation in particular? There has been no press conference where all of those named have been gathered into one room and have been questioned by the press. Do you think that Donald Trump, if he does this, would that there would be more confidence in the American people behind this act?
Yes, possibly. Yes, you have a point. I tend to agree with you. But unfortunately, you know the reality. That part of the Western Hemisphere is known to you. The fact remains that today the American pillars of democracy, they are being driven by invisible deep state. You just took the name of media. Unfortunately, I must call it out in a very subtle manner as far as possible. Talk about the judiciary. You see the composition of the Supreme Court. How many are the sponsor or the linkages they have with those Republicans? Donald Trump himself, he has nominated or he has sponsored those out of 9 benches. I think 6 of them, they belong to Republican affiliated judiciary representative. Similarly, the media is also deeply penetrated and is being driven by or controlled by more or less by the deep state. Now, who are the deep state? That is well known to people in the environment. Talk about the defense industry, talk about any multinational. They have whoever has got money by and large, I would say, is able to influence the decision making and control or regulate a kind of a shadow government behind the elected representative. Otherwise, Donald Trump would have been behaving in a different manner. Why is he going berserk? So third and most important thing is, no matter what we say, judiciary is judiciary. I personally feel, apart from what you have just highlighted about the media briefing, maybe the judiciary may have to take a very special and exclusive kind of effort and view on the whole issue. There has to be a kind of a exclusion or in camera kind of a deliberation on the whole issue. Most probably, whatever the judiciary is deciding, in my understanding, it is getting leaked out to Donald Trump and his dispensation. That's how people have been dilly-dallying. They have a high degree of influence on everyone, judiciary, media, all kinds of investigative agencies. Therefore, the rule of law in America today actually stands to collapse very soon. It's extremely not vulnerable. That vulnerability stage has already been penetrated by forces inimical. They have to actually revisit the whole thing. They have to look at the clause in the Constitution. The Constitution has to have the relevant insertion of these kind of things when the morality, the ethics of the nation, the character of the nation is held at stake. Then perhaps I think the whole nation has to come together and regardless of what the leadership is actually driving or divulging, they have to demand. People's demand cannot be denied. Okay. It has to be proven, and the best way to do is to take it to the floor of the House, prove the confidence motion of the leadership, and if he passes the motion, then he becomes the leader. If he doesn't, let the new leadership take on.
Major General Sadaka Ji, thank you very much as always for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to you on these issues. We have some breaking news coming up next from the South Asian region, and deadly violence has erupted in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. At least 10 security personnel and 37 terrorists were killed after ethnic Baloch separatists launched coordinated attacks across the region. Officials say the assaults targeted more than a dozen locations earlier today. Security forces responded with counter-operations, killing dozens of terrorists and leaving several personnel injured. We'll, of course, continue to bring you the updates from that developing situation out of Balochistan as soon as we get them. We turn back to the US government, and the government entered a partial shutdown on Saturday after a midnight funding deadline passed without approval of a 2026 budget. While roughly 3/4 of federal operations are affected, disruption is expected to be limited, with the House set to ratify a Senate-backed deal earlier next week. The shutdown was triggered by a breakdown in negotiations over new funding for the Department of Homeland Security following Democratic anger over the fatal shootings of 2 protesters in Minneapolis by federal immigration agents. Though the shutdown began, lawmakers in both parties expressed confidence that a swift resolution is likely, with the Senate clearing the way for a quick end to the disruption. If prolonged, tens of thousands of federal workers could face unpaid leave once again. Okay, of course, this would come as there has been several protests from Democratic senators given the killings of 2 U.S. individuals in Minneapolis, causing partisan outcry. Major General G joins us once again. Apologies for that incident that had just occurred. This U.S. government shutdown, why has the government struggled in passing this 2026 budget? And what does it say about the state of the Senate right now?
I couldn't hear your preamble. By then I had switched off. If you can just go over the narrative that in your question, please. What is the background like, please?
The government has entered a partial shutdown after the midnight funding deadline passed without the approval of the 2026 budget. It was triggered by a breakdown in negotiations over new funding for the Department of Homeland Security following this Democratic anger over the killing of Renee Good and Alex Pretty. What does this say about the state of the Senate right now? And do you think we'll be facing a prolonged government shutdown like we saw in the latter stage of 2025?
I hope not, because it's not only one dot. If you join the dots, then it's a series of such unprecedented activities that have taken place related to political dispensation that it gives a clear indication that it's going to be a prolonged one. And Donald Trump would do well if they actually have some kind of a grievance, redressal of the grievance module existing, so that people's voice should be heard. I'm given to understand by my friends in USA that he's blocking off all the means of communication, channels of communication. That's a very dangerous thing to happen. If that happens, a couple of months back, 70 lakh people, 7 million people had come on the street. Thomas, I can only predict that things could go worse, because the situation in USA today is very, very precarious. It is extremely dangerous from one thing to another. Here is a midnight closure being announced by Donald Trump. Basically, it is to protect his dispensation so that they are not subjected to, they are not vulnerable to any attack by the people. People are totally agitated, they are angry. So before any such decisions are taken, I would personally feel he needs to have some kind of a engagement with the people's grievances. There must be some kind of a channel of communication open. Otherwise, media is almost in a virtual, I would say, not being given the right kind of information, and the judiciary is also in a way being insulated. So the right thing, the rule of law is not being protected. That is the bigger danger and harm being coming the way, the America. This needs to be actually addressed in a very comprehensive, holistic manner by engaging with the stakeholders, not by keeping them away. Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Major General G, for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to you. We now turn over to the African continent, and a mine collapse in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has killed more than 200 people. The disaster occurred on Wednesday at the Rubaya Coltan mine, which has been controlled by the M23 rebel group since 2024. The Rubaya site produces about 15% of the world's coltan, a key metal used in mobile phones, computers, aerospace components and gas turbines. Victims include miners, children and market women. While dozens were rescued with serious injuries, an advisor to the governor confirmed that at least 227 deaths had occurred, though the toll may rise. The United Nations says M23 has plundered the mine to fund its insurgency, allegations Rwanda denies. The rebels captured more mineral-rich territory last year, claiming to protect the Tutsi minority. Joining us now to discuss this devastating incident, in DRC is Ayanuga Olugbenga Paul, a public affairs analyst, joining us live from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you very much
for having me on the show.
For joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. What is the scale of this collapse at this coltan mine? Tell us about the current state in these M23 controlled areas. And Rwanda, of course, is denying that the M23 is using the coltan mines to fund their insurgency. What's your analysis on that?
Well, the M23 as a rebel group, as we know it, first and foremost, does not have the capacity yet to be able to run a state properly. Hence, they engage in all of these hand-wringing tactics of using artisanal miners in unconventional way, most of them without protective equipment, proper protection inside the mine, because many of the mine are not constructed using standard equipment where wedges that will hold the mine from collapse will be put in place, and other structures that will make the mine stand. And that is why whenever there is heavy rainfall, we see this situation where mine collapse happen. And in the current case, where it is reported across several media that about 227 have been recorded so far, even though the number could be more than that, that have died, and about 20 were rescued immediately before the mine collapsed. So we see a lot of people being sent to this dangerous position because there is no standard government in those places, and rebel will be what they are. They are akin to slave traders in their modus operandi. Sometimes such that they will be able to make money. And I feel really bad for Rwanda trying to be the spokesperson for the M23 rebel, because Rwanda has continuously denied that it does not have a say in the M23 rebel affair. So if we are accusing M23 rebel of mining all this mineral-rich region to fund its, campaign in holding on to the territories that they have gained, that is nothing but the truth. But now Rwanda jumping to quickly support them will make it look like, so all the denials that you have been doing since all this while that you have nothing to do with M23 rebel are just lies, and those lies are collapsing in the face of proper scrutiny right now. And I don't see this current collapse as last in the series of collapse that might still likely happen, because most often than not, this one, because of the sheer scale of it, got out to the media. The smaller cases, they might even shut down the story from getting out. And that's why you see that a lot of people who spoke to media on this matter spoke on condition of anonymity, because they were not authorized to speak. But there is this human feeling urge that how can over 200 people lose their life in one sweep because of the carelessness and greed of some certain people, and that is why they are speaking. But in smaller scenarios that have been happening, that I'm sure is happening in that region, they would make sure the news does not get out to the public to be able to hear or learn about it. And I don't see them doing anything in terms of re-engineering many of the mines that people are still being forced into labor to work there for peanuts, money that could barely buy them good clothes, not to talk, even food, not to talk of clothes in most cases. So, but people, the natural human instinct is to survive, and in survival, you want to provide for your family, you want to provide food and all the rest. So people have no alternative or choice than to work in some of these mines, as they are trapped in the war-torn zones, so they don't have opportunities to be able to escape this vicious circle. But I just hope that international organization will, beyond the rhetorics, the play of words, find something to do to assist, if it means recognizing the M23 rebel, so that they can, have standard government and standard structure in place to govern the area and provide infrastructures that will regularize all these mining activities, and there will be no illegal activity going on there, even though you can't stop it totally, but at least it will be reduced drastically. So that this can happen, we need the international organization like UN, like USAID and all the rest of them to take this step and start this discussion. This grandstanding by the Congolese government that they are not ceding any part of the country, and it will not work, because I don't see the rebels ceding any part of the territories that they have taken.
Yes, do stay with us, Ayanuga, as we go on to our next story. And we turn to The Hague, and Rohingya survivors are expecting the International Court of Justice to rule Myanmar committed genocide against their people. The case, brought by Gambia, follows the 2017 military crackdown that forced over 730,000 Rohingya to flee their homes. Myanmar has denied the genocide allegations, claiming that the offensive was a legitimate counter-terrorism operation. However, survivors have recounted mass killings, rape and arson, with a UN mission concluding that genocidal acts were committed. A judgment is expected in 3 to 6 months, and the outcome could impact other ongoing cases, including South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Ayanuga joins us once again. If the ICJ confirms that genocide occurred, does that mean a breakthrough for accountability internationally?
It's going to be a very big breakthrough for accountability internationally, because this will not just have effect on the Rohingya or even the Israeli-Palestinian situation. It would also have far-reaching effect on the Uyghur, people versus the Chinese government situation. And all of these people will be able to now properly have a basis to seek for justice to go around in all these places. And because of the many international actors that will be affected negatively if the Rohingya people are able to get justice, I see it like, making the passing the camel through the eye of the needle kind of situation for that justice to be able to happen, because I'm sure that China, knowing fully well that the Uyghur people would want to, demand their own case to also be settled, will do everything to thwart the success of such hearing. The Israeli, we know how they can undo with their Mossad and intelligence network across the world, and how they seems like the hand controlling a lot of things in a lot of places, both seen and unseen. So I personally am skeptical, that the Rohingya people will be able to get justice. But if the judiciary at the ICJ, are able to stand firm against all propaganda that will be raised against them, against all kind of crackdown that might be raised against them to thwart this case, if they stand their ground and they are able to deliver justice to the Rohingya people, because it is clear to the blind, it is, very audible to the deaf, that what happened in Myanmar with the Rohingya people is pure case of genocide. There is no two-way to it. The fact that it is the Rohingya today, it can be my people tomorrow, it can be your people tomorrow, and that is why we must call it as it is, that it is a situation of pure genocide, and the court should rule as such. But of course, there are several technicalities that lawyers from both sides will be able to put forward, and it is not about who is right or who is wrong. It is about based on the evidences that are able to be placed and the convictions that the lawyers are able to make before the justices. Don't forget that this case was instituted by Gambia, in Africa here against Myanmar. And so a lot of technicalities may arise along the way, vis-a-vis the local standard of why just the Gambia has the capability to, it's not their matter and things like that. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that many technicalities in the law will be explored to thwart the case. But if this comes out successful, that the Rohingya people are able to get justice, then it will have far-reaching effect across the world and will send shockwaves in many places that will be good for the oppressed in several places across the world.
Ayanuga Olugbenga Paul, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It's always a great pleasure in speaking to you. We now move on, and a US federal judge has signaled that she may dismiss a lawsuit filed by Elon Musk's AI startup XAI against rival OpenAI. XAI accused OpenAI of stealing trade secrets by poaching employees to gain an unfair advantage in developing AI technology. However, US District Judge Rita Lynn says she tentatively agrees with OpenAI's motion to dismiss, stating that XAI did not plausibly allege theft of trade secrets. The hearing on February the 3rd will decide whether XAI can amend its claims. This lawsuit is part of a larger legal battle between Musk and OpenAI, with Musk seeking $134.5 billion in damages. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.